Good morning, everyone. Today's topic is John Calvin and the Calvinists. Calvinists were another Reformation group that formed around Luther's time. Today's denominations that were influenced by John Calvin and the Calvinists are Continental Reformed churches, Congregational churches, Presbyterian churches, which is probably the most well-known, Evangelical Anglicanism, Reformed Baptist churches, Amarialdism, Hyper-Calvinism, Neo-Calvinism, Christian Reconstructionalism, and New Calvinism. So, a little history on Calvin. Calvin was 26 years younger than Martin Luther, and one of the most influential and important reformers of his time, especially in France. Luther got the Reformation moving in Germany and around the Catholic Church, and reformers like Calvin continued in Luther's footsteps. But that didn't mean Luther agreed with Calvin on everything, but they certainly didn't disagree too much. Calvin, according to the European Reformations by Carter Lindbergh, was, and I quote, a ruthless inquisitor and a sensitive, caring pastor, an ascetic, cold authoritarian, and a compassionate humanist, a rigorous individualist and a social thinker, a plodding systematizer, and a theologian's theologian, who finally completed the doctrine of the Trinity. A man dominated by logic, and a man of contradictory traits and inconsistencies. A theoretician of capitalism and socialism, the tyrant of Geneva, and a defender of freedom, a dictator, and a revolutionary, end quote. So needless to say, Calvin was an extremely smart individual, just like Martin. But he also had very complex thoughts and personalities, which made him a controversial figure. Unlike Luther, Calvin actually finished his law degree and started with theology and then ended with law, because that's what his parents wanted him to do, and he actually respected his parents' wishes and did it, unlike Luther. He was never actually ordained as a pastor, but rather given that title through the Geneva Town Council. So he was not ordained through the church, rather given that position through secular means. And he was also self-taught as a theologian. He never went to seminary, and he never received that kind of formal training like Luther did. Calvin admired Luther and his writings, and took many influence during his own theological works in the writings of what he called the Institutes. Calvin was basically the Reformation leader in France. Calvin was known for his extreme want to unify. He had his opinions, but he worked really hard to bring people together, to unify organizations and the people of who he encountered. Calvin and Melanchthon were acquaintances and worked together to formulate a joint understanding of where they disagreed, specifically around the Lord's Supper or the Eucharist. As we know, Lutherans believe in the Lord's Supper as being the body and blood of Christ, where Calvin wanted the option to state that unbelievers might just receive bread and wine, really emphasizing the idea that the Eucharist presence really is in the heart of the receiver, and not in the pastor or priest's faith who is giving. Except most modern-day Calvinists believe more in the presence of the Holy Spirit in the Eucharist, so rather than the true body and blood. So it's more than just a memorial symbol like the Anabaptists, but it's not quite to the same literal change in substance that Lutherans and Catholics believe in. Calvin was overall a reformer of all that he touched. He was all about the holistic approach to human life. Politics, governance were in need of reform just as much as the church was to Calvin. And Calvin truly was one of the greatest reformers of his time, both political, social, economic, and religious. And he really should be credited with similar, if not more, respect to reform as Luther. Well, I hope you enjoyed that quick overall summary of Calvin. If you want to know more about Calvin and Zwingli and the rest that we're going to talk about, again, these books are excellent. The European Reformation, as well as a Reformation Reader. And as always, the links are in the description below. Have a great day. God bless.